He thought she was just a waitress, just another face in a busy cafe. He had no idea who she really was, or the moment that would change everything. What happened next left him speechless, and it's a story you won't forget. Jasmine Brooks adjusted her apron as she moved behind the counter at Crescent Cafe, one of Buckhead's busiest lunch spots. The cafe wasn't fancy, but it had a warmth that regulars loved, a place where people could slow down for a few minutes in the middle of their hectic day. Jasmine knew every table, every regular, and every menu item by heart. Yet, what most people didn't know was that she was more than a waitress. She carried herself with quiet confidence, a composure earned from years of working in high-pressure situations, both in and out of the cafe. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the cafe buzzing with the lunchtime crowd. The doors jingled, and Jasmine glanced up. In walked a man in a tailored navy suit, polished shoes, and a crisp tie. He scanned the room like he owned it, exuding the kind of confidence that bordered on arrogance. Jasmine felt a slight tension, sensing he wouldn't be the easiest customer. "Table for one," the man said, his tone sharp, almost impatient. Jasmine led him to a corner table and handed him a menu with her usual polite smile. A few minutes later, the order came through to the counter: a grilled chicken sandwich, a side salad, and an iced coffee. One of her newer team members, nervous from the lunch rush, accidentally swapped the iced coffee with a vanilla latte. Jasmine noticed immediately, but before she could step in, the man's voice cut across the cafe like a whip. "Excuse me, this isn't what I ordered. Seriously, do you people even know what you're doing?" Heads turned. Customers murmured. Jasmine's co-worker's face flushed red. Jasmine walked over calmly. "Sir, I apologize for the mistake. Let me fix that immediately." But he wasn't having it. His voice rose, dripping with sarcasm and contempt. "Fix it? Look at this place. Look at you all. How do you even manage to keep a cafe open like this?" By now, a small crowd had gathered, watching the scene unfold. Jasmine crouched slightly to meet his eyes, still calm. "I'm the manager here. Let me handle this." That's when he laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "Manager? Oh, please. You're nothing but dirty, messy, clueless. Do you even understand what you're doing? You're just a waitress. That's it. Nothing more. Just a waitress." A hush fell over the cafe. Customers exchanged shocked looks. Jasmine's hands clenched at her sides, but her face remained composed. She could feel the anger rising, but she knew she had to handle this carefully. One wrong move, and the situation could explode. Yet inside, she vowed that this man would soon learn something he couldn't see now, a truth about her that would leave him stunned. Because Jasmine Brooks wasn't just a waitress. And soon, the entire cafe would witness the moment he realized just how wrong he had been. He had humiliated her in front of everyone, called her dirty, messy, just a waitress. But he had no idea that the moment he thought he had control, Jasmine Brooks was already several steps ahead. The cafe was silent, the hum of conversation stifled by the tension in the air. Jasmine stood there, her hands resting lightly on the counter, her posture steady. Ethan Clark's words had cut through the room, sharp and condescending, but she refused to let them shake her outward composure. The young co-worker who had made the mistake shrank behind the counter, her eyes wide with embarrassment. Jasmine placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. Mistakes happen. Let me handle it." Ethan snorted, clearly enjoying the discomfort he had caused. "Handle it? Seriously, this is pathetic. Do you even train your staff, or do you just let anyone wander in here and call themselves a worker?" Jasmine took a deep breath. She could feel the heat rising inside her, but she kept her voice calm, measured. "Sir, I'm truly sorry about the mix-up. I assure you, it won't happen again. I can replace your order immediately, and I'd like to offer you a complimentary dessert for the inconvenience." He waved his hand dismissively. "Don't bother with that. I want the person in charge to understand the seriousness of this. You're not fit for this job. Look at this place, messy, chaotic. And you're just a waitress. Nothing more." The word stung, but Jasmine knew reacting with anger would only escalate the situation. Instead, she let him speak, quietly observing his demeanor. He was proud, used to being in control and entirely convinced of his superiority. After a few moments, she straightened her shoulders and responded, her tone soft but firm. "Sir, I understand your frustration, but judging someone based solely on their job or how they appear doesn't tell you the whole story. We all have our own paths, our own experiences, and the work we do, whether serving food or running a company, is just one part of who we are." Ethan blinked, clearly unprepared for such a measured response. His mouth opened to reply, but Jasmine continued, "I respect your opinion, but I also ask for the same respect in return. We're doing our best, and that's all anyone can ask for." For a moment, the cafe seemed to hold its breath. The other customers looked on, some impressed, some quietly nodding at her grace under pressure. Jasmine's co-worker glanced at her with admiration, clearly inspired by her manager's calm authority. Ethan finally muttered whatever, and turned his attention back to the menu, clearly irritated but slightly unsettled. He didn't know it yet, but Jasmine's quiet composure had already planted a seed in his mind. He had underestimated her completely. Jasmine watched him for a moment longer, then moved on to attend to other customers. Inside, she allowed herself a small smile. The day was far from over, and soon he would see a side of her he never imagined, the side that reminded everyone that no one is ever just anything. Because Jasmine Brooks had more than patience. She had power, intelligence, and a future that would leave Ethan Clark speechless. After the lunch rush ended, Jasmine stepped out back for a moment, leaning against a small brick wall behind the cafe. The city noise faded slightly, replaced by the distant hum of traffic on Peachtree Street. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Being patient, polite, and professional under fire, it wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Many people assumed Jasmine's life ended when she clocked out of the cafe. Few knew that she wasn't just any waitress. Jasmine Brooks was the founder and CEO of Brooks Tech, a tech company she had started from scratch and built into a thriving enterprise. Yet she rarely flaunted her success. To her, humility mattered more than recognition. She loved working at the cafe, not just because it kept her grounded, but because it gave her perspective on life and people. Understanding ordinary struggles and daily interactions helped her lead her company more wisely. Tina, her co-worker, came up behind her. "You okay?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "That guy earlier, he was harsh." Jasmine smiled faintly. "I'm fine. It's not about him. It's about how I handle it." Tina hesitated. "I just don't get it. You're the CEO of Brooks Tech, right? You could be anywhere right now. Why work here?" Jasmine looked out at the street, calm and thoughtful. Because success isn't just about money or status. It's about understanding life, understanding people. It's about humility and perspective. You never know who you're dealing with or what they might teach you, even if it's in the middle of a cafe. She allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. Brooks Tech wasn't just another company. It was growing fast, impacting industries across Atlanta. She handled investors, projects, and decisions that shaped the futures of thousands. And yet, here she was, pouring coffee, managing a small team, learning lessons she could never get in a boardroom. Returning inside, Jasmine noticed Ethan Clark sitting near the corner, scrolling through his phone. He hadn't realized yet that she was more than he could imagine, and what he didn't know, even she wasn't ready to reveal yet, was that their worlds were already connected in ways he couldn't even suspect. Because Jasmine Brooks wasn't just a waitress. She was a leader, a thinker, and someone who understood the value of patience, humility, and timing. And soon, very soon, Ethan Clark would learn that lesson the hard way. The cafe buzzed with its usual rhythm. Cups clinking, conversations flowing, the hiss of the espresso machine. But at one table, Ethan Clark had made himself the center of attention. He leaned back in his chair, legs crossed, a smug smile spreading across his face as he scrolled through his phone. Two younger men, colleagues by the look of their matching work badges, joined him. Ethan wasted no time showing off. "Yeah, Brooks Tech is expanding fast," he said loudly, making sure the nearby tables could hear. "We're closing new deals every quarter. Honestly, it's only a matter of time before I'm running one of the divisions myself." Jasmine, wiping down a nearby table, paused for a second. She caught the company name instantly. Brooks Tech, her company. She hid her reaction, continuing her work quietly, but inside, a storm of emotions churned. Ethan continued, oblivious. The executives there? Untouchable. I mean, the CEO? Whoever she is, she's just a name on paper. People like that don't know anything about the real grind. It's guys like us who make the wheels turn. His friends nodded politely, though one of them seemed less impressed. Ethan leaned forward, lowering his voice just enough to sound conspiratorial, but still loud enough for Jasmine to hear. I'll tell you this. Half the people running that company wouldn't survive a day in the real world. They sit in their glass offices while we handle the real work. That's why I deserve more. Way more. Jasmine's hand tightened around the cloth she was holding. She could feel the sting of his words, not because they threatened her, but because they revealed his blindness. He was judging her at the cafe, judging the leaders at Brooks Tech, without realizing the two worlds were already colliding in front of him. Still, she stayed quiet. She wasn't ready to reveal herself yet. Timing mattered. When she returned to his table to refill his water, Ethan smirked. Careful with that. Wouldn't want another mistake, would we? His colleagues exchanged awkward glances. Jasmine set the glass down gently. Don't worry, sir. We all learn from mistakes. Her voice was calm, almost disarming, but there was a quiet power beneath her words. Ethan laughed, mistaking her composure for submission. See, that's the difference. Some people learn, and some people stay stuck, serving tables their whole life. His words hung heavy in the air. Customers nearby shifted uncomfortably, some shaking their heads in disapproval. Jasmine met his gaze for a brief moment, her eyes steady, unflinching. Inside, she knew something Ethan didn't. Very soon, he would discover the truth. And when that moment came, his arrogance would crumble, because the waitress he mocked wasn't just serving coffee. She was the very CEO he worked under, the one person whose signature could decide his career's future. And his lesson was coming. The afternoon crowd began to thin, but Ethan showed no signs of leaving. He sat comfortably in his chair, as if the cafe was his personal office, his voice carrying across the room. Every now and then, he glanced at Jasmine, his smirk never fading. Jasmine stayed calm, gliding from table to table, her composure unshaken. But inside, she knew this game wouldn't last forever. Ethan Clark thought he had her figured out, thought he was talking down to someone beneath him. What he didn't realize was that he was speaking to the very person who controlled his professional destiny. Ethan leaned forward, addressing his two colleagues again. I'm telling you, Brooks Tech is where the future is. Once I climb a little higher, I'll be in those boardrooms making the big calls. The executives, they won't know what hit them. Jasmine placed a plate on the table next to his, intentionally within earshot. She straightened and said casually, Sounds like you're aiming high. Ethan looked up, eyebrows raised. You wouldn't understand, he replied with a mocking chuckle. This is corporate life. It's a whole different world from whatever this is. He gestured at her apron, as if it was beneath him. Jasmine tilted her head slightly, her tone still polite. You'd be surprised. Sometimes people in aprons know more about leadership than those in suits. His colleagues exchanged quick glances, sensing a quiet power in her words. Ethan, however, only scoffed. Right, sure. Maybe you read a motivational quote once. But trust me, the real decision's the real money. It's way above this level. Jasmine smiled faintly. And yet, people in those positions still depend on workers at every level to keep things moving. No one is really above anyone else, sir. It's all connected. For the first time, Ethan hesitated, her words striking a chord he couldn't quite dismiss. He covered it with a laugh. You've got spunk, I'll give you that. But still, this isn't the boardroom. It's just a cafe. Jasmine nodded gracefully, but her eyes held a glimmer he didn't notice. Maybe so, but sometimes the boardroom and the cafe are closer than you think. Her words lingered as she walked away. Ethan frowned, confused, but quickly shook it off, returning to his phone. He had no idea that she was dropping quiet hints, soft reminders that he didn't know her story, that the person he belittled wasn't who he thought she was. Across the cafe, a few customers whispered each other, impressed by Jasmine's calm strength. Her coworker Tina gave her a small smile of encouragement. Jasmine had endured his arrogance long enough. The time for patience was drawing to an end, and soon the tables would turn. Because Ethan Clark didn't just insult a waitress, he insulted his own CEO. And the moment of truth was almost here. The next morning, Ethan strutted through the glass doors of Brooks Tech's towering headquarters in downtown Chicago. His tie was sharp, his shoes polished to a shine. He had no idea that this day would rewrite everything he thought he knew. An email had gone out to his apartment the night before. Mandatory meeting with the CEO. Attendance required. Ethan was excited. This was his chance. For weeks, he'd been boasting about his ambition to rise in the company, and now he might finally meet the person pulling the strings. He walked into the boardroom with two colleagues, still replaying yesterday's cafe encounter in his mind. "Can you believe that woman?" he whispered, acting like she knew anything about business. Just a waitress. People like her don't understand power. His friends exchanged awkward glances but said nothing. The room hushed as the door opened. Everyone rose to their feet. And then Jasmine walked in. She wasn't wearing an apron now. She wore a tailored navy blue suit, her natural curls framed perfectly, her posture commanding the room. Confidence radiated from her every step. She carried no tray, no coffee pot, only the authority of someone who would build an empire. Ethan's jaw dropped. He blinked once, twice, as if his eyes were lying to him. Jasmine set her fold on the polished table, glanced around the room, and finally let her gaze rest on Ethan. Her voice was steady, calm, but edged with power. "Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Jasmine Brooks, founder and CEO of Brooks Tech." A wave of whispers rippled through the boardroom. Ethan's colleagues turned toward him, their expressions shifting from curiosity to disbelief. Ethan's face burned red. He tried to speak, but only managed a dry stammer. You're... Jasmine's eyes never wavered. "Yes, Mr. Clark. I am the same woman you mocked in the cafe yesterday. The one you called dirty. The one you reduced to just a waitress." The silence in the room was deafening. Ethan's chest tightened. His arrogance, his smirk, every ounce of superiority he carried. It all evaporated under her steady gaze. Jasmine continued, her tone clear and cutting. "You judged me by my apron, by my skin, by where you thought I stood. But what you didn't realize is that leadership isn't about titles. It's about respect. And yesterday you failed that test." Gasps echoed around the room. A few heads shook in quiet disappointment. Ethan's colleagues couldn't look at him. Ethan lowered his eyes, shame flooding his face. The very company he bragged about rising in, the company he worshipped, was built by the woman he had humiliated. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her calmness was more powerful than any anger. She simply gathered her notes and said, "Meeting begins in 5 minutes. Mr. Clark, stay behind." At that moment, Ethan knew his career, his pride, and his reputation would never be the same again, because the woman he had called just a waitress was, in fact, his CEO. The boardroom slowly emptied, whispers following Ethan like shadows. His colleagues avoided his gaze, some shaking their heads, others whispering behind their hands. His arrogance had evaporated, replaced by humiliation that clung to him like a heavy cloak. He sat frozen at the long mahogany table, his palms damp, his mind spinning. Just yesterday, he had laughed at her, dismissed her, called her dirty, said she was just a waitress. And now, he realized he had spat those words at his own CEO. The door closed softly, leaving only him and Jasmine. She stood at the head of the table, her posture calm, her eyes steady. For a long moment, she said nothing. The silence pressed against Ethan's chest harder than any words could. Finally, she spoke. Her tone wasn't sharp, but measured. "Mr. Clark, yesterday you revealed who you are. Not to me. I already know my worth. But to yourself and to everyone who heard you." Ethan swallowed, his voice trembling. "Ms. Brooks, I didn't know. If I had known." Jasmine raised her hand gently, cutting him off. That's exactly the problem. Respect should never depend on titles. If I were just a waitress, as you said, would I deserve less dignity, less kindness? Her words hit him harder than any punishment. Ethan's eyes burned as shame rushed through him. He had spent his whole life chasing power, judging people by their position, never realizing the depth of the character right in front of him. I was wrong, he admitted, his voice breaking. And I'm sorry. Jasmine studied him quietly. She could have ended his career with one word. She could have used her power to destroy him, to give him a taste of the disrespect he had poured on her. But instead, she chose something greater. Ethan, she said softly, your future at Brooks Tech doesn't depend on me forgiving you. It depends on whether you change. Respect the janitor the way you respect the board member. Respect the waitress the way you respect the CEO. Until you learn that, success will always slip through your fingers. Ethan lowered his head, unable to hold her gaze. I understand. Jasmine gathered her notes and walked toward the door, her heels clicking softly against the floor. Before leaving, she paused and turned back. You asked for the boss yesterday, she said, her voice calm but piercing. Now you've met her. Let this be the last time you underestimate someone because of their uniform, their skin, or their position. And with that, she left the room. Ethan sat alone, the weight of his arrogance pressing down on him. For the first time in years, he didn't feel powerful. He felt small. But in that smallness, a seed was planted, a chance to grow, to change, to finally understand the true meaning of respect. And that was Jasmine's real victory. Not the reveal, not the power, but the grace to teach a lesson that would last a lifetime. What would you have done if you were Jasmine? Show grace, or teach Ethan a harsher lesson. And if you enjoyed this and want to follow more of our emotional and moral lesson stories, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Thanks for watching.